It was an ordinary Tuesday, unassuming and tranquil, with no hint of the upheaval to come. I returned home exhausted from a grueling day at work, kicked off my shoes, and let my keys jangle onto the kitchen counter, their sound reverberating in the quiet. The refrigerator's soft hum filled the space, and a faint scent of shampoo wafted through the hall. She stood by the window, her arms crossed tightly, her eyes fixed on some far-off point. "Are you okay?" I ventured. She turned, her voice calm but her gaze vacant, and said, "I can't do this anymore." I let out a nervous laugh, assuming it was a fleeting quip, but her face held no trace of jest. There was no fury, only a chilling emptiness that pierced me more deeply than any heated exchange ever could. Words eluded me as I tried to respond. Her expression laid bare the truth. She wasn't aiming to hurt me. She simply felt nothing at all. That truth stung with a sharpness no weapon could match. In a moment of unthinkable resolve, I walked away. Not for a brief escape or a night to clear my head, but for good. I didn't pack a suitcase or scribble a goodbye. I snatched my wallet and keys, slid into the car, and drove until the road melted into a haze of uncertainty. 5 hours later, I found myself in a serene coastal hamlet, where the air was thick with the briny scent of the sea and fishing boats far outnumbered the residents. It was a place where questions were few, and your history remained yours alone. I secured a modest room above a hardware store, paid with cash, and took up odd tasks, repairing fences, sealing leaky roofs. I introduced myself as Drew, nothing more, nothing less. Each dawn, I'd stroll along the docks, a steaming coffee cup warming my palms, my coat buttoned against the chilly breeze. Seagulls screeched above, boats creaked against their ropes, and for the first time in ages, my mind settled into a quiet calm. Some might call my departure cowardly, but sometimes vanishing is the only way to rediscover your own breath. Yet no matter how far I roamed, her shadow clung to me. She lingered in the fragrance of Earl Grey tea, in the soft tunes spilling from old radios, in the way my hand instinctively reached for her across an empty bed. She never once tried to contact me, and that silence wounded more than any farewell could have. Months drifted by unnoticed. Then, out of nowhere, my phone vibrated. It was Darren, a shared friend I hadn't spoken to since I'd fled. His voice trembled, hesitant to share his news. "It's Isabel," he said. My chest tightened. "She's ill. Cancer, stage 1. They found it early, but she's facing it on her own." A heavy silence hung between us. I know it's not my place, but she has no one else. I didn't answer. The next morning, I climbed into the car and drove back, uncertain of what I'd say when I saw her, unsure if she'd even let me in. But she did. She looked more fragile, more worn, yet undeniably herself. Her eyes widened at my presence. "You don't need to speak," I told her. "I'm here if you need me." Without a word, she stepped aside to let me in. The house stood frozen in time. Yet it felt eerily lifeless, as though existence had stalled within its walls. That night, I slept on the sofa. She didn't offer a bed, and I didn't ask for one. Come morning, I prepared her tea just as she always liked it, my hands guided by muscle memory even if our hearts had lost their rhythm. She drank it in silence, and that became our routine. Small gestures, quiet moments, no apologies, no expectations of a future. Her treatment began: chemotherapy, fatigue, nausea. I drove her to appointments, lingered in sterile waiting rooms, cleaned when she was too weak, held her hair back, clasped her hand. Some nights, she cried in her sleep. Others, she stared into the dark, but I remained. Not for reconciliation or hope, but because love doesn't fade just because you've walked away. 3 months later, we sat in the kitchen. She broke the quiet. "Why did you return?" she asked. I considered a simple reply, but chose truth instead. "Because I still care," I said. "Even when you didn't." She didn't weep, just nodded and reached across the table to graze my hand. It was a small gesture, but it changed everything. The months that followed felt lighter, softer. She began to smile, even laugh. We watched classic movies on the couch, took gentle walks with her hand nestled in my arm. I read to her when screens overwhelmed her, and she'd fall asleep against my shoulder. We spoke, truly spoke, for the first time in years, unraveling how things had fallen apart, how we'd stopped listening to each other. She admitted she'd felt invisible, as if she were dissolving in my presence. I confessed I'd felt helpless, like my efforts never made a difference. It was raw and painful, but that pain carved a path to honesty. One afternoon, the doctor glanced up from her chart with a warm smile. "You're in the clear," he said. No fanfare, just a quiet declaration of triumph. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing like a child, and I held her as if I'd never let go. She'd defeated cancer, but in those 5 months, we'd conquered something else: distance, pride, silence. We didn't revert to our old selves. We forged something new, not perfect or easy, but authentic. And that, above all, was what truly mattered.